Transformation Podcast. Jesse, Raffi. Raffi, we're inching every day closer and closer to the big, beautiful bill. You know about the big, beautiful bill. It's been
Yeah.
bouncing between Congress and the Senate or whatever. I don't have a question about the details inside the big, beautiful bill. Instead, I have a question. Do you think it was Donald Trump that made that name? Or do you think it was one of his staffers that encourage the way he talks into it being called the big, beautiful bill?
Interesting.
Whenever you hear the news outlets talk about it, and they have to call it the big beautiful bill is in Congress, the big beautiful bill is in Senate. It's it's pure comedy in my eyes. I've never heard anything called that in politics, and it would those are words that would exactly come out of Donald Trump's mouth, but I don't think that would be anything that Donald Trump would legitimately title a bill.
Yeah, especially looking at the news media, the legacy media, really leaning into that name.
Yeah.
It kind of it almost makes it seem like it's coming from Peter Thiel or someone that's associated with the tech oligarchs, because they'll definitely fall in line even with the Trump administration here. And yeah, and then there's, it's a triple B right there. Like that's something if I really sat
Oh
and
yeah,
and
good point.
thought about, like there could be some type of esoterica
And
like
it's the
mixed into there.
second letter in the alphabet, 222. If you multiply 222 by 3, it's 666, so it could be demonic.
Or even just add up the 222 to 6. Yeah.
Yeah, so it could go any way, and for you to call out something like Peter Thiel or the tech oligarchs creating that name actually makes a lot of sense. I haven't thought a lot about it, but every single time I hear that term on the radio or on Twitter or Caroline Levitt or whoever says it, the big beautiful bill is going to do this for you, and the big beautiful bill is going to do that. I I will say I remember the first round of Trump tax cuts in 2016, 2017. We all thought it was going to be this epic difference in our money, and it wasn't. I'm not expecting any different here. It just feels like everything that comes from DC is just like a TV show. That's what all of this has kind of turned into, is like this reality TV show. We have our drama throughout the week, whether it's tariffs sinking the economy and then the economy or the market miraculously rallying, and then the court says no, you can't do tariffs. Okay, nope, we're going to overreach that. We can do tariffs. It feels like this president, more than any other president, really leans into the law a lot. Or are these rogue judges that are deciding to enforce the law just to make things more difficult? You know, have presidential executive orders always been kind of on the border or along the parameters, walking the line of the law, or is Trump just this president that wants everything to go through court and wants it to be this news topic?
Well, I think, he's so masterful in the way he lays traps for people too. So I would almost wonder if he's laying out certain traps to expose the corruption within the judicial system, especially after what he went through in the lead up to the election with
Mm-hmm.
the judicial system, and federally too. Because, one of the things I just glanced at really quick before we started talking was like another federal judge had blocked some more of his stuff, and I think it's, as you're saying, a back and forth, because I've been looking, and it seems like it's going back and forth the last 5 days or something. I've been reading a lot. Could be just be repeated headlines, uh, but there's that part of it, and then of course on the astrological side with the court systems, very Saturnian. Saturn just entered Aries. The ruling planet is Mars for Aries, and then if you like disposit that, fall that over to where Mars is currently right now, that's in Leo. Well, Trump and JD Vance are both Leo risings, so they're very great with taking that center stage energy of it, and it is taking that center stage right now amongst how are we going to reestablish a new, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, judicial system? So we're leaning into that energy. It seems like they've got their astrologers, their esoteric people kind of leaning into that. Then there's that Peter Thiel side, because Peter Thiel is connected to JD Vance in a very intimate way. He funded JD Vance out in California, and he created a huge startup for him, and it was essentially just a piggy bank for JD Vance. And this is after he made it through school, made the proper connections to find him there. Actually, a really similar story to how Obama rose as well. They just went to different schools, but they had very similar up rises to power, we should say,
Yeah.
and seemed to both come out of some type of intelligence community, of intelligence bloodline, if their fathers aren't who they say they are, which is the case with a lot of these elites, is they'll be like, oh, well, this is my father, but really it ends up being that. But that's kind of getting a little far off base. Yeah, with this whole judicial thing though, it definitely we're in the energy now of there are going to be warring factions within the government. They already have been, but they're going to take that center stage. It seems like it's been hidden in a lot of this Pisces energy we've been in, but everything has just moved into Aries. Everything's like going to be refreshed, renewed, and it is taking that center stage when you're looking at where Mars is in this intro into all of these planets moving into Aries.
You touched on where Obama came from, and I wanna get to that, but before I do, remind me if I forget. Um, Speaking of things being uncovered, recent event in the Oval Office last week was when the South African president came to visit in the Oval Office. Did you see that clip?
Oh yeah, it was beautiful.
For anybody that didn't see that clip, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, had the president of South Africa in the Oval Office for a Oval Office meeting. The media was in the Oval Office asking questions, and about 5 or 6 minutes into the questionnaire, one of the reporters asked about the genocide of white farmers in South Africa. And for anybody that hasn't been following the whole South Africa thing, there are certain factions of the political parties in South Africa that believe that they should be taking back the land from any white farmer and killing white farmers. And apparently there's been like thousands of white people that have been murdered in South Africa for this reason. So Trump was going to answer it, and the South African president took over the question. He says, "Let me answer this." And he says, "I assure you, this isn't happening. You would see that my head of agriculture over here is white," and he's making all these examples of people in his political circle that are white that aren't murdered. I'm clearly a diverse person. And then Trump says, "Here, turn off the lights, roll the TV in," and everyone's thinking, "What? When have we ever gotten an opportunity to turn down the lights in the Oval Office?" And Trump plays this 5 minute clip of this president himself saying, "Kill the white people, take back our land." And I'm being a little bit more direct than what was actually said, but that was the message of what was happening. And these were videos that I had seen actually a couple of years ago, and I had been wondering a lot about this because it's like, what is going on down there? And you got to watch this video that was played in the Oval Office while simultaneously watching the face of the South African president and how uncomfortable he was. And after the video finished, the South African president was speechless. And the first question comes from ABC News. "President Trump, why did you take a jet from Qatar?" And President Trump eviscerates this reporter. "Did you not just see what we watched? You're a terrible reporter. You should be ashamed of yourself." The whole 9 yards of how Trump treats reporters in the Oval Office. And anyways, they kind of get to the topic, and then the South African president says to him, "Well, maybe what we need is maybe more American support and American money to make sure that this doesn't happen." And the nerve, the nerve to ask that after being basically shown out that he was lying about what he had just said with that video of pure evidence, right? And I just thought the whole exchange was so magnificent. And it this is why I told you before we hit record why I believe politics today is nothing more than a TV show. It's something to marvel at because we were kind of talking about before. Everything felt so fake with the Biden administration, the fake TV sets. I was mentioning to you Pete Buttigieg pulling his bike out of an SUV 2 blocks away from the Capitol and riding his bike to the Capitol, as again showing, oh yeah, I ride my bike, I'm green. Um, I just, what were your thoughts on that exchange?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was just gorgeous, like so masterfully played. And it was funny because I woke up and when I finally got to check my phone, it was the first thing that I saw. And it was just, I mean, it just made my day truly. And it is unfortunate to look at what's going on there with the farmers. It's incredibly horrible because there's this double standard of people not wanting to acknowledge it. But if it was reversed, of course, everyone would be up in arms. And it's really ridiculous, even just looking at the background with what's been going on in South Africa. As you've taken land from these white farmers, the wealth has gone down, the income, the productivity, all of that has gone down. And there is this, and you can make these arguments for a lot of stuff in America in different types of ways. But if Black people are given, and I'm not putting any of this line of thought on you, like in terms of what you think or anything like that. This is purely coming from me. But how come you're giving Black people more autonomy there, but things are going downhill? They're presenting it as this way where things are supposed to go uphill and they're supposed to be doing better because it's always been the fault of the white man there. But that's not the case of what's happening. And then on top of it, they're murdering these people. And as far as like in the US, how that's going and how I relate that is just, test scores within the Black community, all of this stuff. I thought as we got more rights, we're supposed to be getting smarter. It's supposed to be on this even playing field, but the only even playing field that Black people in America have been able to get for themselves is through this diversity, equity, inclusion initiative, which I will say initially was great for just getting all of this segregation mentality out of the mindset, but we're there. You see the pushback on it, and now it really truly is based off of merit. And no one's gonna be buying this whole like, oh, well, you didn't hire me because I'm Black or because I'm this, because I'm that. And I've just never been that kind of person because I'm a smart guy. Like I've never been like, oh, I can't get this job because of my skin color. And the reason I'm bringing this up is just getting to this whole idea of that we're in the same alignment as the Civil War. There is this revisitation of race relations, and we're going to need to be able to talk on a much deeper level about what are the things that are holding back Blacks, not just in America, but all around the world, and this dichotomy that's going on, these tensions between the Black race and the white race, because I think it goes deep on a spiritual level, but then also on an economic level, all of these things. And we need to truly ask ourselves, what do we define Black culture as, and what is actually just us enabling ourselves within the community to, be, at least in terms of America, on welfare, on all of these assistance programs, and then not put in any effort to better ourselves while draining on, mainly from whites and Asian taxpayers. And then it's the same thing over that you're seeing there. It's just they're farther along where they've gotten violent and are taking things back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the whole race war thing. Feel, and you can comment on this because I think maybe you have a lot better of idea of maybe the way people had treated you growing up than myself. And I was never hostile towards anybody that was a different skin color than me since I was a little kid. But I feel like the whole race thing started when Obama got in, and I know it started before that, but maybe that was the first time I was aware of it. But it felt like it was really publicized at that point. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it seemed to have reached a new level. And of course, Obama was someone that was backed by Soros. and there's this whole initiative within that community of the Soros intellectuals, as they'll call themselves, to create like the divide and conquer method, of course.
Hmm.
So that was an initiative that was rolled out because he was a black president. But uh, I was listening to this guy because that was more what he pushed than actually helping the black community in a lot of ways. And people will state all these different ways he helped the black community, but if you look at the effects of them now and currently, it just further enabled the black community and further drove them into hate and divisiveness towards white people. But there was this guy I was listening. He went on like a little monologue on it, on how Obama did more for the gay community than he did for the black community, and that hit me hard. I was like, wow, that's actually true if you really think about it, and it's like a little bit spooky too. But yeah, like with he stoked a lot of things. I mean, while Obama was in office, you had him fanning the flames of the Trayvon Martin case. So that was a big one. And it's so interesting that I'm talking about this whole Neptune Aries Civil War alignment, revisiting a lot of these race relations, things that have been kind of like brushed under during Neptune Pisces, and that's the nature of Neptune Pisces, just brushing things under the rug if you want to. Uh, all this stuff is coming back out now too, because
Yeah,
I'm seeing all this getting discussed in the last few weeks, really.
right. Yeah, it's sad that we fight over something that seems so simple. Like it doesn't seem like something that would ever actually or should ever actually create any kind of hostility towards one another is the color of their skin. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it never has. And when a politician comes in and, like you said, fans the flames of the Trayvon Martin tragedy. Now, I was a lot younger when it happened. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it, but what happened with Trayvon Martin, he was walking in a neighborhood with a hood up, and George Zimmerman, I think was the name of the neighborhood guy that had shot him. He just shot him because he was walking through the neighborhood with his hood up. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, I know that's what was marketed to us. I've been looking at a few people. I wouldn't necessarily say that these discussions were in themselves deep dives, but they are from people who had done deep dives. And I've been meaning to really go back and revisit that because they presented him as just being this little kid, and all the pictures they showed were of him much younger than he actually was. They didn't bring up all of the incidents that he had of shoplifting, of violence, and all of that, and the relationship and the history with police, with the dude, I'm forgetting his name, George Zimmer, is it right? George
Zimmerman,
Zimmerman,
right? George
yeah,
Zimmerman. Yeah.
uh, and all of that, and I tend to, especially when you have a jury of peers, I like to at least lean in the direction of the jury and try to like, okay, well, what evidence were they looking at and all that instead of what were sold through the media,
Yeah.
especially during the time of Neptune in Pisces.
Because Zimmerman got off, right? He didn't get convicted.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the
exactly.
other debate. So again, it goes to, and we were talking about this too before we hit record, what the media shows us and what really happens. And just like David Hogg being at Sandy Hook and being at like three other school shootings for interview during these tragedies, these national tragedies, and then all of a sudden he's the head of the DNC.
Yeah, and then you were telling me that he just got kicked off of it too because of stuff that came out. So, it's this thing I keep revisiting of like these last degrees with Saturn and with Neptune and things that have been hidden, and then they just come out like right as we cross over.
Yeah,
And so it's like, and we're in these extreme degrees on each end of the Pisces and Aries there of these planets moving over. And then we still have them retrograding back in the
yeah,
fall. So it's like, all of a sudden we're going to see us, like those of us truth seekers, I'll say, I won't even use right or left, we'll lose some ground for a little bit there until the beginning of the year, until like February, and then we'll move back into it. But there is
it,
something I wanted to say
yeah.
with
What is it?
what before we move on from like race relations and stuff, because
Yeah,
I just had a very interesting thing that happened to me. And it really exemplifies a lot of this pushback and people being tired of being called racist and really just like being, like F your feelings about it, kind of how we were bringing that up before we were recording. It just truly exemplifies it. So I got a special to give plasma. They were giving me like $100. It's 40 minutes of my time. So I'm like, okay, let me go in and do it. I got some free time. So I went in and I get in line, and there's a guy who gets in line behind me. And I mean, he presented as like white, but I came to find out he was, biracial. He was like Latino and white and everything. But I say he presented as white because it kind of gets important later on. Then a lady who was doing her questionnaire for the plasma donation, she cuts like five or six of us in line and stands next to her husband.
Oh.
And we're just kind of like, what the heck, like, and I wasn't even gonna say anything. I'm like, it's not worth it today.
Yeah,
Like, I
you
don't
even
even.
though you're in Vegas, you're from Minnesota, you don't say anything.
Yeah, exactly. And but then the guy who got in line behind me started saying something,
Yeah, right.
and then the husband and wife, they started acting like they were like, oh, we don't speak English, and I guess they didn't speak English. But then the dude behind me, he actually spoke Spanish. So then they're going back and forth in Spanish, arguing about it. And they just go back and forth and back and forth, and I'm like, okay. And then and there's a lady next to me as well, and she's like Latina, but she's just on her phone minding her business. And then
Well, this
the
chaos.
the dude next to me, once he says he just says the word Hispanic, like talking about just like I don't even like remember because he was speaking a little bit of Spanglish. But once she heard that word, then she looks up and she gets involved and sees him and how he presents his way and starts calling him racist.
The
And then
girl
at
that
that
was on her
point,
phone.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then at that point, I'm like, okay, like what the heck here? And I look over at the girl on her phone and I'm like, everyone is tired of being called racist, okay? It's just not going to work anymore. It's not going to fly anymore. The word has lost all power and all meaning. Everything is racist now, apparently. So, like you're not really accomplishing anything by doing that. And then she starts going off about Donald Trump and
Oh my God.
immigration and all of that, but getting very emotional. And
Wow.
I'm very good at saying I have no water in my chart. So like I can stay very emotionally centered. And I
Yeah.
was just like, our emotions are running pretty high. Okay, like, hey, just relax. Let's all just relax. And
Wow.
the line moves on a little bit more. They're going back and forth, like, and I'm like, everyone just chill, just kind of trying to de-escalate a little bit. And not gonna lie, having a little bit of fun because I'm Mars and Leo in the 11th house. So I have no problem kind of, just getting in there and like
That's your excuse for being an instigator.
yeah,
Oh, sorry,
exactly.
I'm
It's
Mars on Leo. This
total.
is what I do.
It's instigator energy. It really is.
Yeah, right, right, right.
And so like at first, but like I can present as just like, oh, let's all just chill, so but then it really reached instigator level because the lady and of course I won't even get into all the little exchanges that were going back and forth. But I will say when I made that comment about people are tired of like everything is racist, people are tired of it. Like I made eye contact with a lot of people in line and they all agreed with me of many different races.
Yep.
And but then the wife and the husband went up to go and get their screening done.
Mhm.
And I just went up, and I can put on the charm and the nice voice and everything. I went up to the phlebotomist doing the wife, and I'm like, hey, miss, like, I'm just letting you know, like, she cut like five of us in line. And, we just like really think that's unfair. And I like gestured to everyone, and they're all agreeing and stuff. And it's just really messed up. We're at the end of the day, and, we're all just trying to like get done, do our stuff, get out of here. And like, I'm just letting you know. And then, so all the people are agreeing with me. And then she starts speaking to the lady in Spanish, saying like, you got to get to the back of the line.
Oh
So
shit.
then like she gets mad.
Yeah.
The husband gets mad. The husband comes to start stepping on me and like try to fight me. Then the dude who was behind me, he steps in front of them. I was just like, oh shit,
And a plasma
So and
center.
then yeah, well, and it's so funny because it was kind of in the ghetto. So like there was already they have a security person there. So like the
Oh
security
my
people
God.
came, start holding them back. And then the lady who had been on her phone, she's over here. She starts calling me racist. And I'm like, what girl? Oh my God, what? So what did she even? She's just like, you're like you two are motherfucking racist and this and that, and like you should know because you're black. Like, how could you even be like that? And I was just like, look, lady, okay, all of us were racist fatigued at this point, okay? Just like if when you start saying that, all of us are just gonna disengage. Like, no one even cares anymore. Just stop with all of this, and then everyone starts cheering in line and all that. I was just like, oh yeah, because there was like a couple white people in line, and I'm like, I know I'm speaking to like the white people right now because it's like the white people have like totally bent
Uh,
over backwards to prove they're not racist in a way that none of the other races have had to do in the last
yeah,
20 years.
right.
You know, and they still get treated like pieces of shit. Like it's just horrible. But yeah, so then there was the cheering, and then she got even more mad. She's popping off even more, and I'm just sitting there like, giving her a pleasant face, smiling, and I'm just like, "Well, are you like still talking right now, lady?" She's like, "Why are you still talking?" Blah, blah. And then I let her go off even longer, and I'm like, "I thought I was the one who was still talking," and she's just fuming, and the phlebotomist had to pull her like, "Hey, like either get your screening now or like leave," And
Yeah,
while all this is happening, they're dragging out the husband and the wife. And then they like tried to come back in and they're saying that they're gonna beat up the one dude who stepped in between the guy who had been behind me. So all of that happened, but it was really interesting because all of like there were three of us because there was this white lady too who kind of got into it with so it was like us against the husband and wife and the other lady. It was like a 3-on-3 essentially.
oh my
And like we
God.
all ended up passing our screening and everything, but then the white husband and wife got kicked out, and the lady who was calling me racist and the dude racist, her like blood pressure and heart rate was so high because she just lost it
She couldn't
that
give
she
plasma.
couldn't donate. So it
Oh
was like
my
so
God.
wild. And then so we all get
Um,
through and do screening, and then I find out we're all like very spiritual people, light workers. And so I ran, horoscopes for all of them while we were donating, just like did the astrology in my head because they knew their sun, their moon, their rising. And it was just like such a beautiful thing. But I think that really exemplifies where it's at right now is like the the spiritual nature of things is not going to be trying to be disillusioned by like, oh yes, of course, like I'm racist and like I will, get on my knees like and totally like to just say I'm a horrible person. It's like just being a realist about it. Like, dude, none of us care anymore about race. Like we're in that society that like it's very rare to find someone who actually just cares about race and like that's what they're going to talk about and get into and be hateful over. It's just so rare. Like in your
yeah,
daily life, you might see it as a psyop on the internet all the time, but it's just not there. And so you
yeah,
kind of see that that's like what the universe is going to reward now. It's just being real about it.
yeah. Morgan Freeman during the height of tension, in my opinion, said it best. If we don't talk about race, race doesn't exist. And it's such a simple thing. It's so simple. Like when I see you, or you see me and we discuss our discussions, we don't mention other than this, we don't mention race to each other because
Yeah.
that's not what we see. When I see you, I don't see your skin color. I see you. I see Raffi,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I mean, like going to school together, that was never something we were talking about. We were just
no,
friends.
yeah, and there was nothing in school that, and maybe there were people at school that were that way. Again, I wasn't around that kind of stuff. My group of friends, it wasn't that kind of stuff. But it didn't seem like anything that we ever really even discussed until the it's probably about 2 years before the end of the Obama term is when things got really tense, and it's just kind of where it went, and then it peaked when you saw people in the street dying from cops that probably weren't doing their job correctly, but also guys that were also shoving fentanyl in their mouth, 10 minutes before they were kneeled on. So, it's okay for each side to say, hey, like that cop didn't do his job correctly, but it's also okay to say, hey, George Floyd, held a gun to a pregnant lady's head while he robbed her and um, took a fistful of fentanyl before he was arrested. That's probably the reason why he was freaking out the way he was before it all ended, because he was probably going through a mad drug trip. And again, the cop didn't handle it well. And I don't think that's a reason to burn down a city. I think that's a reason to maybe hold police officers a little bit more accountable, but then also to understand the height of anxiety that a police officer probably goes through on a daily basis. I'm in no way wired to be a police officer. I couldn't imagine pulling somebody over, especially in the middle of the night, that has tinted windows and music blaring. You know, in whether or not it's a white or a black person, that's a whole nother topic. But just imagine approaching a car and a stranger in the middle of the night. That's scary. And you're in the hood in Minneapolis, and you're approaching somebody that paid with a fake $20 bill, and you're walking up to their car, and it's suspicious. And they did say, and it feeds into the whole psyop thing. Chauvin and Floyd knew each other, maybe cross paths at one time because Chauvin was a bouncer at a nightclub that Floyd also happened to work at. So they may have known each other. They may not have known each other. That's a whole nother topic, whole nother conspiracy theory. I've seen conspiracy theory videos where Floyd shows up to his own funeral, you know. So it again feeds into what we're kind of talking about so far today is this whole everything is fake. And I'm not saying that what happened was fake, but it feels like every single event that does happen, there's like four different stories of what could have actually happened.
Exactly. And it seems like it's only gonna speed up more and more, like especially mid-July. That's that point of Uranus and Gemini, because Gemini is a lot of that information, communication, and Uranus, it really just takes things to the next level. So, like, I think we're going to see kind of a jump in technology at that point, like new technologies being released. And the saturation of information is just going to be so intense. And we feel it coming on. I'm someone
Yeah.
who's always been able to keep up with the mass amounts of information we're getting fed every day and parse through it, discern it, and all that. And it's just getting more and more difficult. And
Yeah.
even with like with the encyclopedic nature of myself and over all these years, like gathering knowledge and data and everything, it's still difficult to really get through it and be like, okay, what's what, like where's what,
Yeah.
and everything. And oh yeah.
Well, I it was going to move on if you're ready to what I wanted to um, talk about a little bit before this topic, Obama being made in a lab, and then
Hmm.
also having a manufactured wife, Big Mike.
Yeah.
And I was curious about what you know about or what you've read about Obama, how he rose to power and where he came from. It seemed it seemed like the perfect storm for creation because we were right around that time in our society where we were ready to have a man of color be the president of the United States. And here comes this, instead of a white knight on a black horse, the black knight that comes in and kind of assumes that role of leadership. And you had mentioned with JD Vance and Obama both being maybe bred within the intelligence community, it seems as so it could be a real possibility. And the reason why I believe that is Obama was the best one, this probably one of the best politicians I have ever seen speak on a microphone. The perfect statesman. Same with Bill Clinton. If you listen to some Bill Clinton speeches in the early 90s, that guy knew how to make a speech. That guy was
Yeah.
good. And Obama also, especially at the beginning, was damn good on a mic. He knew how to talk his way through anything, and he was the perfect politician. And it makes me believe that there's some sort of creation, and you could, to simplify it, we could say created in a lab in the intelligence community. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I know with it's very interesting the whole Big Mike idea and the implication of transgenderism that goes there. Even besides all of these tours and little nuggets that have been dropped on podcasts and interviews that she/he has been doing. Obama himself was the nanny that raised Obama was transgender.
Really?
Yeah. And
Oh,
and so this is something that Candace Owens, she got into it, which was a great refresher for me because it had been so long since I researched it. But Yeah, he like came up. I guess he was born out in Africa, like northern
Yep.
Africa,
Yep.
and then he was moving through all these people who were directly connected to the CIA and to like the outcrop or the descendants of the whole Allen Dulles portion of the CIA and all these intelligence agencies. And so he was moving through all of these people with these connections, staying with them, but then always had that transgender nanny with him. And so that was like already an
Wow.
interesting thing. So you have to think about his years, his sexually formative years always being next to a transgender person, and that being like if the things are true, which it seems very true about Big Mike, and it's almost like she's getting ready to reveal this stuff on a more public level because I think that they know because they have good astrologers that it's going to come out anyway because of the nature of the energy that we're in. So it's like almost like they're purposely dropping little hints.
Yeah.
So I'd almost say that it's almost confirmed at this point, you
And
know.
and
I
look
mean, at
at
least a lot of
Michelle's
us in the
brother.
astrology community think that.
You've seen Michelle's brother also, right?
I don't believe so.
She has her brother on the podcast, her podcast that flopped.
Oh,
And there was a show on Netflix a long time ago, maybe 5, 10 years ago. It was about a white girl, blonde girl, and she had like this big black fat gay friend. He was head was shaved, shiny white teeth. You could use his icon as like your profile pic on Netflix. He was kind of like one of the,
oh,
you know who I'm
Unbreakable
talking.
Kimmy Schmidt.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Her brother's identical to that guy. And
interesting.
isn't that strange? If you watch a
And was this
few,
just recently he was on the
well,
podcast?
that's her podcast partner for her podcast.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I don't think they shoot anymore because it flopped so hard, but it it when I was looking at that I was like, "Oh my God. Does it run in the family? Is that even a thing? Or is this again something that is staged in front of us? Like what are the odds?" And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it again it feeds into the whole Obama, like you're saying, the tranny nanny. That kind of sounds cool. And the and Big Mike, and it's a very, very odd dynamic.
Yeah, and you know, if bringing in the Satanist part of it too, and the idea that all these people are Satanists, I mean, within that community, they believe in the hermaphrodite or like, you know, the fusion
Yeah.
of the man and the woman really to be the pinnacle of spirituality, at least in that version of it, in the satanic version of an impulse of it because you can commune when you've like defiled yourself in that type of way. It's the ultimate insult to God's creation, and so you're that much closer to demonic presences. So it's interesting that like transgender people have like the highest rates of suicide
Yeah.
and like all of these things that really show this deeper connection to the darker realms. And you know, like one of my best friends is transgender, like man to woman, so I'm not even like that. Like but she's also broken free from a lot of the ideology. I mean, she voted for Trump, you know, which would be like most transgender people would hear that and be like, "What? Oh my gosh, they must just want to kill themselves." And you know, so it's not like I'm putting this on all transgendered people, but there's this theme that I've noticed with that. So I think that's another interesting aspect to add to it too. And you look at with Obama in particular, but it's a lot of these presidents, the connections that they have to satanic rituals and orders and secret societies that have been caught doing all that. It's, you know, and I think that we're openly seeing it leak out through Hollywood and through all sorts of stuff, like with all the stuff that's coming out, we're seeing this spiritual warfare. And then even myself with a gift of dreaming, lots of spiritual warfare going on in my dreams right now. It's insane.
One last thing I'll add about the Obama thing is one thing that doesn't get talked about enough or never really actually got covered was his gay chef drowning
Oh
in
yeah.
the pond in the backyard.
Hmm.
I mean, what since when does anybody chef? going to a pond in the backyard and drown.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's been so much that comes out. Like I'm okay with looking like a fool for now and being vindicated later that Obama is like totally gay. Like he's gay,
Went on
you
the
know?
Well, yeah, and that Tucker had that guy on that apparently sucked his dick too.
Hmm.
That's a funny story. So I mean, just come out, fine. It is what it is.
Well, he was involved with the Diddy parties. The Diddy parties were like gay as hell. There was, of course, the person that was on Tucker Carlson. It would seem like the chef just had
It,
a thing, like it was a side thing with Obama.
that the pills at the Diddy party were in the shape of Obama. The ecstasy
Yeah,
pills were Obama. They were
that
pressed
was
Obamas.
crazy.
What more do you need? The
Yeah.
Diddy files are odd, aren't they? Why can't we get the coverage in the Diddy files that we got for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard?
Yeah, it's really insane to see what you know, they're really trying to get a handle on it and get a hold on it. This gets back to those energies I'm talking about, but things just aren't landing. So little things are leaking out and stuff. We're still not getting everything we want to get, but I think especially if they're still going through this case when Uranus enters Gemini, I think something big's going to drop and it's going to have this cascading effect.
Yeah. Move on to
Because
JD Vance.
that's the planet of surprises is Uranus. So I'm like I'm looking out at
Yeah.
that coming in, and I'm like there's gonna be some type of big surprise around information that's gonna really rock things.
Yeah. Let's move on to JD Vance for a second here. And
Yeah,
um, the Smithsonian, not just as a museum, but as a gatekeeper. Most people think of it as like a place full of dinosaur bones, spacesuits. But I feel like, and we were talking about this a little bit, that there's something that's hiding the story of our real past. Here's what's kind of crazy: the Smithsonian doesn't have to publicly disclose everything that it finds. Artifacts, ancient remains, civilizations. We were talking about the Grand Canyon, ancient civilizations that maybe we don't know about can be quite uncovered, but it's done quietly, and then all of a sudden it disappears. And member of the board is JD Vance, and we've talked about JD Vance before. We really haven't gone in depth on him, like we kind of have been talking about off mic yet, but we can go a little bit into it today. Trump gave him the power to oversee what stays and what goes in these institutions under the label of restoring truth and sanity. But whose truth are we really talking about? What if this isn't about preserving history but controlling it? Imagine if they found a civilization, ancient civilization that had lived in the Grand Canyon that actually was similar to the whole ancient Egypt thing. I know like there's these different pictures of these stones that are cut out as the Sphinx, but like the top half of the Sphinx is missing. What if the ancient evidence that they have it doesn't fit the current narrative and it's being locked away or destroyed to protect the current version of power? I know I brought it up on this podcast before about dinosaurs. Is it a ploy? Is it something that just kind of popped up in the mid 1800s? Meanwhile, the Smithsonians are actually hiding real giants that had roamed this earth, and they're hiding the bones, and the dinosaurs are the way to mask or to cover up with what really had happened in our past. And then somebody that might be steel manning it would then say to me, well, what's to gain from it? And I can honestly tell you, I have no idea what there is to gain from it. I just think it's fun to talk about. And there are some things that are odd that should be questioned.
I think that the truth, the thing that could be gained is the truth. As you get closer to the truth, you can tell too a lot with a lot of these ancient things about humanity. But as you get closer to the truth, it's almost like it's impossible to control us, and I think that's why they had to burn so much or hide it away, you know, in terms of a lot of this ancient knowledge, because then it became possible to control us. And I think that they not only know that energies are moving, kind of going into JD Vance and being on the board, and is there stuff to be hidden there, and gate kept. I think with the energies that we're moving into, you really see that they know they can't stop us from awakening, but there's this idea of a false light awakening, or like essentially trying to control this awakening process of the consciousness, because it's just spreading like wildfire at this point. All the people that are waking up, it really started during COVID. There was a little bit of a lull, and then you see this like resurgence of it around the election, and even like the months leading up and before that, like that whole year, people are just waking up like crazy. Gen Zers are doing a great job with waking people up, thank God, because they're involved with this all the time on TikTok. But with his JD Vance, that is his connection to Peter Thiel, and then, there's Peter Thiel with Palantir, which is collecting all this data. And then they're all in bed with all these other oligarchs. And, you got Zuckerberg, you got Bill Gates, you got Elon Musk, and they're all trying to cozy up in the same way. There's this exchange of information and data. They're setting up some type of infrastructure for something, but it seems like they need to be able to control the channels. And Elon Musk's job seems to be, as much as I love what he's doing with Doge, like there is a lot of data collection going on. You know, and then this lines up perfectly with the real ID stuff. So they all have these segments of data collection they're doing. And it seems like JD Vance's role is to come in because Donald Trump is in a lot of, at least astrologically speaking, in a lot of danger of assassination, especially this year too, like over the summer here. And I think I dropped that to you one time recently, but and even like more than one of my astrologer teachers are talking about this. But the whole idea of the false light awakening, if they can get us into this idea of the whole Ahrimanic urge, which is that kind of technological mind, that other side of the satanic force, the Ahrimanic force, the cold, empty machine mind, as they're rolling out these AI technologies that are going to give us so much access to all of this information, they can at least lay it out in a way where they still maintain control. Because that's their biggest thing right now, is trying to maintain the control right now of that, and still like be on top. But the way that the nature of this information and everything that's coming out is, it won't allow anyone to be on top, because that was essentially where we're coming from, is a place where we had all the information, at least in like the Atlantean times. One of the parts of the Atlantean times before we started to really go at it is we all had access to anything we needed, through the free energy, to clean water, clean air, clean food, being able to commune with the higher realms through what Edgar Casey talks about and Steiner talk about, the two-eye stone, which was a type of, I won't even get into that. We'll save that for the next episode, the two-eye stone. But and this is even people who start to re-engineer this stuff talk about how they can see the past, present, and future. They can see into the heavenly realms. They get messages, when they're dealing with this torsion physics energy thing. And then that's the thing that they're putting above all, even the nuclear secrets, is the torsion physics, like apotheum or apotheosis type of energetics that you get off of like UFO technology. Just all this is, it's encapsulated into one holistic science that's being so hidden from the public. So they're like, well, we can just drop little bits of the truth and this and this and that, and then people will feel like they've awakened. And this leans into the third temple being built. You've got, it seems like the Trump administration or the Trump team, with like the military intelligence being the ones that are behind Trump right now, fighting against what's been entrenched within the government since the assassination of JFK, essentially. Like that Trump side are Knights Templar, it seems like. And then you've got perhaps Rosicrucian, perhaps something I'm not really getting a good handle, but it seems to be a compendium of like Zionists or like Judeo secret societies. And then there's like a couple other mixed in that have been perverted, like the old Freemasons and stuff like that. But there's this warring that's going on. And Casey and Steiner said that this would happen too. They said it would happen 100 years from in the 1920s. We're at that time right now, but there's this new window that we've entered and pushed to where these secret societies are trying to release more to the public, bring us up a level in our knowledge, in our gnosis, in our spiritual understanding. And they're fighting over how to do it right now. That's the biggest thing I'm seeing.
I have a list here of reasons why dinosaurs don't exist.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to listen to these?
Yeah, because I was intrigued the last time we brought that up, actually.
I'm not saying that I believe that dinosaurs don't exist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm doing is I'm presenting to you these facts, and then we can discuss it. And I'm not going to come away from these reasons telling you that they don't exist because I don't know if they did or don't, but it's fun to talk about and it's fun to think about. And it goes back to what you're talking about also is these different psyops that are put in front of us, these different false flags. Um, it, there's something about all of this that really draws me, and maybe it whatever information that's being released is working absolutely perfect because it's got me drawn in and distracted from what's really happening, I guess. All right, here we go. One, the Smithsonian's legal right to dispose of artifacts under U.S. Code Title 20. The Smithsonian has the legal authority to dispose of items in its collection. That means if they find something, they don't have to keep it or even tell the public about it. Why would a national museum need the right to destroy or hide ancient objects? Now, goes back to what you're talking about with the UFOs. If they unearthed an element or a craft that maybe was in the ground, again, they don't have to disclose what they found, and they could haul it off to Area 51 for it to be reverse engineered, to be looked at. And that goes into a whole nother discussion that maybe we'll have for another time of, yeah, there probably is some sort of alien on this earth. Maybe it's more spiritual than it is actual aliens, but I would attest that I think aliens have been here maybe the whole time, and maybe they're in the water. We are very unsure of what's in the ocean. The deepest parts of the ocean we can't get to. There might be another way to planets in the uh, fr- there might be another way to get to planets off this Earth, and it's not through flying up through the sky, but it actually might be through the bottom of the ocean. Something to think about,
Yeah.
something to talk about. Um, there's this clip of this guy that was on the bottom of the ocean, found like what he thought was a lake on the bottom of the ocean. It was really dense, and he was just bouncing off of this lake in the bottom of the ocean. There's also been I've heard different
Yeah.
conspiracy theories about a lake in the bottom of Lake Superior.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
this weird connection between water and space, on a very
yeah.
deep level, and
It
it's
is.
like, I mean, it requires so much theological background to truly grasp what it means and everything like that. But even with and we'll talk about it later, but and I'll go deep if you want me to, but I really think there's this connection with the Atlanteans and with what we call aliens because we were involved in genetic manipulation back in those times. And then, like, especially when you're talking about like how much is going on in the water, well, Atlantis like was flooded, whether
Hmm.
you want to view that metaphorically or anything, but
Yes. All right. Number two, the mysterious disappearance of giant skeletons. Multiple 19th and early 20th century newspaper articles, the New York Times and Washington Post, report real giant human skeletons being unearthed across the U.S., some 8 to 12 feet tall. In many of the reports, the Smithsonian was said to have taken possession of the bones. Today, there's zero mention, zero photos, no bones, and now they will say that that never happened. And I was saying to you before this episode, back in when newspapers were really popular, it was a thing for people to write in stories to get published in a newspaper for a prize. So it could be somebody that, without the context of understanding of what the story was in the newspaper, it could have been somebody, again, telling a story that wasn't real, but again, very odd because there are things around the internet. There are places in the internet you can go where you can look up a lot of like giants roaming the earth at one time. You have the story in the Bible, David and Goliath. There are evidence in our history, and even if you look at hieroglyphics of potentially giants roaming the earth. And the weirdest one, in my opinion, is when you see like giant rock formations or like they're in the shape of a human. You know, if you're looking at like big giants, most notably in when we talk about Hollywood leaking certain little bits of information in the movie Moana, Te Fiti was the mountain at the end of the at the end of the cartoon movie that came to life once you put the heart back in Tefiti. But it was this giant that turned back into a mountain, and it's the shape of a woman. And
Oh wow.
there are some different formations and mountains that you can look at, and it's like that is actually the shape of a body. Now that could just be natural, or it could be something a little bit deeper. Again, it goes to that whole mysterious aspect that really draws me. Okay, number
Yeah,
three.
well, and I'll say
Go ahead.
even if you overlay all of the, like the made up stories onto it and even give it be a little generous with it and dismiss a lot more stories, the one that you really can't dismiss. And I can't even think of the guy's name right now, but Dark Journalist goes into it. His name is Daniel List, also like Dark Journalist. He's on YouTube, but he always brings the receipts. I love him for documentation. He's just a true scholar. He's great on so many different topics, but he did a deep dive over weeks and weeks a few years back over these expeditions to the Grand Canyon, finding giants, how well documented it was that the Smithsonian swept in, took over everything. Like these people had good faith in the Smithsonian that this would be like a great discovery, it would be broadcasted to the world, and they totally hit it.
Yeah, and there are certain parts of the Grand Canyon that you're forbidden to go. And I've read that two people every year die of the Grand Canyon from falling off a cliff. So it's not about safety, because if it was about safety, then they would probably have some kind of parameters that would then say, don't get too close to the edge. Just like, wearing a seatbelt in the car. We're gonna make sure that you're safe, even if you don't want to be. But so again, you are able to walk right up to the edge of the Grand Canyon with nobody stopping you. But if you go to a certain part of the Grand Canyon, black helicopters show up and say, get the fuck out of here. All right. Number three, no complete dinosaur skeletons are on display. What most people don't know is that the majority of the dinosaur skeletons that you see in museums, including the Smithsonian, are replicas. The real bones are often fragmented or locked away. So, have we actually ever seen a full, genuine dinosaur skeleton? People laugh at me for this, but it's absolutely true, and it's made up of
Yeah.
chicken bones. It's plastered chicken bones.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was when I remember learning that a while back, and I never really thought much on it because at the time I was an atheist, so I was kind of like in that whole dogma and ideology of the scientific establishment, just like, oh well, they know what's going on, and we'll go, but a lot of the bones, like they were saying, they're fragments, and then they'll just construct the rest of it, and they're like coming up with these ideas in their head about it. It's not really like based on anything. It's pretty crazy.
it is. Number four. Dinosaur discoveries skyrocketed after 1850. Before the 1850s, there were no dinosaur bones in the public record. Suddenly, in the late 19th century, they called it a bone rush. Why did nobody find them before industrialization and modern mining tools? Was this a PR move to support evolutionary science and undermine religious narratives? So, do you believe that we didn't find dinosaur bones before them because we just didn't have the equipment to dig? Or is that part also part of a cover up? It's another piece of evidence that's odd.
Well,
And
it's interesting you bringing this up because, of course, there's the stuff I've talked about with the Casey readings and like dinosaurs, but that they existed like way closer. I would almost say with this new information that like the skeletons themselves were all gone, and what we're looking at are really like giants that existed even closer to our history. And then those are those bones, and of course, like all like the dinosaurs of the if they existed are like long gone. You could almost say that this is like a genetic memory we're coming up with too, like something we're pulling from the ether and we're trying to like, and that's like that's a lot of the ways that they do their magic is like something that did exist. Like if you were to say they existed in the time of Atlantis, the bones are all gone, like none of them actually like fossilized. And what we're really looking at is fossilized stuff from the giants, but that's something I'll have to look into. But that's kind of making more sense to me now, is
mhm,
that this would be left from the giants, because that we were interacting with them, like whether you want to talk about Sumeria, the first civilization after the fall of Atlantis, or within Atlantis itself.
yeah. Number five, the Smithsonian's close ties to the government and military. Smithsonian isn't just a museum, it's a federally funded and tied to the US government. They get over $1 billion a year. That's why it's sometimes referred to as the nation's attic. Not attic, like me, but attic. Some believe it functions more like a vault, filtering discoveries and choosing what history the public gets to see. I'll keep going. Number six, the term paleontologist didn't even exist before the 1800s. The field was pioneered by a small group of men, many of who were rivals and even accused of planting or faking bones during the infamous Bone Wars. Seven,
Wow.
no fossil digging laws. Early in America, there were no regulated excavations in the 1800s, which means any claims made about massive bone discoveries went unchecked. The Smithsonian and its associates held first access to many of these unverified digs. Then eight, last one. The Smithsonian's historical involvement in suppressing outlier finds. In 2014, a Supreme Court lawsuit accused the Smithsonian of covering up the destruction of giant skeletons in the early 1900s. The case was dismissed, but not before fueling decades of speculation about what else might have been cleaned up in the name of historical narrative control. Now, what this all ties into is archaeology. And if anybody listening to this or yourself has really dove deep into the whole archaeology community, it's a really fucked community. These are
Yeah.
people that put out a story, and it almost seems like they don't want to appear as incorrect. So if new information comes along, they suppress it and they don't talk about it. Meanwhile, like 98% of the Sahara has never actually been excavated. And you can blame that on conditions. You can blame that on a few things, lack of resources. Um, but there's clearly something over in that part of the world. Like they were just discovered the obelisks underneath the pyramids in Egypt. Uh, the Sahara used to be the Trans-Saharan Way that connected the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. It's now just a massive salt deposit. Also, Mauritania is kind of in that path. It is said that Mauritania was Atlantis, going back to Atlantis. If you
Oh
look
yeah.
at Rashat structures on Google, they're the same shapes as what Pluto claimed to be Atlantis, of those circles. And um, I'm going to tie this all together for you here at the end. So, Mauritania, the leader of Mauritania, I forget the name, the emperor, the ruler, was the richest ruler of all time. And even in today's rates, he had so much gold, it was like equal to like $1.5 trillion in gold. We're so why is our society so tied to gold? And we talk about, and you mentioned actually, how Atlantis maybe went into the water, genetic, uh, not mutilations, but genetic, being able to twist genetics, right, and then maybe living underwater and being that breakaway civilization that is somewhere in the depths of the Atlantic or in the depths of the Pacific, right? What if this civilization has come up and somehow made us crave gold and mine gold and somehow filtering it back to that breakaway civilization? I can't put a finger on why gold is so valuable to humans. And the other thing that's kind of wild about gold is as it increases in value, we were sold a bill of goods that cash is backed by gold, and it was at a certain time until it wasn't. But now instead of gold, we collect paper as a version of currency that really, if you rip it, has no value. If you were to break a bar of gold in half, it still has its full value. But if you rip a $100 bill, the $100 bill doesn't have any value anymore. It's almost like we were tricked to go get gold, go mine gold, and instead of getting the gold physically, we'll just give you this paper, and then the gold gets stored away into Fort Knox, which, by the way, never got audited like we were told. Um, so long story longer. I don't think dinosaurs are real.
Yeah, the the dinosaur stuff is, I mean, it's added a lot more. That actually makes more sense to me too. But I guess before I forget about the gold stuff, there's of course the whole Anunnaki Nephilim side of it and the idea of us being like a slave race. I think that's partially true, but then I look into Zachariah Sitchin and his connections with intelligence, so I'm like they always give us a little bit of the truth to try to,
Mhm.
so I think there is this inherent connection we have with gold. I try not to take on this idea of a slave race because I think it disempowers us. And but there is, the gold is directly connected to the sun. The sun is connected to the Christos or the Christed energy, and there's this whole connection to it. And then like if you're going to connect that zodiacally, the ruling planet of Leo is the sun, and then you've got Trump coming in here as a Leo rising, and gold is of course rising. He's bringing up these ideas with Fort Knox and all of that, so it's almost like he's bringing back a lot of not just the gold itself on that physical sense, but these Christed or ancient teachings are like coming back through. All of our memory is getting tapped and accessed. There's this whole mass awakening that's going on right now. It's just that you've got JD Vance on the other side of it that, is he's got that connection with the Smithsonian. And then, I even had it open here with his chart. Like I didn't even like look at it until I'm just like kind of glancing at it right now. But his Leo is his son in the 12th house. So he's got there's this hidden aspect to him. There's like with his personality and with the connections and relationships he has too. So like the Peter Thiel thing, there are things that we don't see about, or even the Smithsonian. Like there's that whole aspect there. And then, I mean, I won't get into all the aspecting with it, but that's like the most important thing that really just jumps out to me at like just looking at his chart itself. And so that I think there's this like play going off of it. And it was interesting how JD Vance was implanted right after the assassination attempt on Trump.
Mhm.
And then at that point is when Trump started to accept the money that came from, I'll just say it, the Jewish donors, Miriam Adelson. It almost seemed like that JD Vance was a package deal with that. And like we've been talking about the whole manufactured nature of him. And I guess tying that back to, the Smithsonian and the dinosaurs, there's an interesting thread right there. I feel like we're supposed to be pulling at, even though it might not seem related with the dinosaurs. I think that's actually really important.
Yeah, and it even ties into him going to visit the Pope 2 days before he dies. Meanwhile,
Yeah, yeah,
meanwhile, like Kamala, when she was vice president, was being grilled about, "Have you ever been to the border?" And then she replies, "I've never even been to Europe." So that vice president, that vice president never has been to Europe, and then Vance happens to visit the Pope 2 days before he dies. It's very,
yeah.
very
And I mean,
weird.
and Vance is he's an excellent communicator. Like he's got all of these, like comparing the charts between him and Donald Trump, he's got all these alignments that are really just incredible for taking on, the only thing is that Trump is much better at speaking to the common man than Vance, but Vance does appeal to the common man. It's just that
Yeah.
Trump will be very crass and all that, and JD Vance is, I mean, he's pretty polished and stuff. And if you look at the way that he'll get vulgar, it almost does seem a bit manufactured. And it sucks
Yeah.
because I do like JD Vance. Like I'm enjoying what I see when he's on television because he's going against the media establishment all the time.
He
So
was great
so I
on
do
Rogan
like it.
too. He was really good on Rogan too. Uh, and another one of the members of Trump's administration I really enjoy watching is that Stephen Miller. Are you familiar with Stephen Miller?
Stephen
He,
Miller.
he's bald guy or shaved head, whatever you want to go with, and he usually
Oh,
answers the questions on CNN or Fox News. He Trump put together a group of guys that and girls, Caroline Levitt, that really know how to
yeah.
kick back some answers. It's truly impressive to watch. And
Yeah, Caroline Levitt's good.
the we were talking about it before we hit record, the whole fuck your feelings tour that's going on right now. It's um it's definitely doing its job of drawing me in and watching consistently. And I'm not going to come out here and say I support fully what's happening, but I can say that it's really entertaining and really fun to watch. So I'm going to continue to monitor it, and I think that's what they want us to do. So um, other than
I mean,
that,
it's gonna be chaos. It's meant to be chaos. We're moving into systems, new systems prop like coming up and being the next way that we're moving for at least the next 20, 30 years. So when you have a new order being established, just like during World War II, which, oh my gosh, we're moving into that same alignment for the first time since then, which is Uranus Gemini. So but just like where we had the start of all these new systems and institutions and the way we do things since then, there was a lot of chaos around it. So we're going to see a lot of chaos. And I think if people can just remain grounded and understand that there has to be chaos right now. It's like everyone is dissatisfied, whether you're on the right or on the left, with everything that's been going on. And it's not like we can just wave a wand and have everything be different one day and have people accept that either. It's only through chaos, through destruction, through us coming together and building something new together can we actually have a new system.
I want to comment on one last thing about the left. So I saw this post of this, I'm just going to say it, this fat white girl that got hired by the DNC to help white males come to the Democratic Party.
Oh, yeah. I
And
did see a little bit.
I just want to take a moment to say how disconnected the Democratic Party is to about 55 or 60% of America and probably about 70% of white men in this country. First of all, and we talked about it at the beginning of this podcast, white men were targeted aggressively for male toxicity, masculine toxicity, racism. If you're a white male, don't even bother applying because we're not going to hire you. This was the theme for a decade. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're not going to get me to jump over to the Democratic Party with the way that you're marketing it over to me is with this. First of all, this might sound shallow, but this unattractive woman calling me over to come vote on her side of the party, and I know that might sound shallow, but they're just so disconnected, and you see it within their party, even how we were saying earlier, David Hogg's in the DNC, and then David Hogg gets kicked off the DNC because he does something that gets him canceled. And if Demo- if Democrats want to appeal to someone like me, white male, how about start a message of no war, decentralize the Department of Education, decentralize the Fed, and hire people that are best qualified for positions. Just start there. And also take all the shit out of the food and allow me as a father or as an adult to make my own decisions when it comes to vaccinations and medical rather than enforcing that my kids get 72 shots before they go to kindergarten. So
Yeah.
take all these things away or even half of them and then maybe I'll start to think about jumping over to that side. But what the crazy part is everything that I just listed off to you is what liberals were in the 90s and in the 2000s.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I mean, that's what it was get away from the corporations and take away the Fed, decentralize everything and be free. That's what a liberal was freedom. It's not the case anymore. Now it's you're too stupid to make your own decision, so we're going to make the decision for you. Oh, and by the way, if your 12-year-old kid is going to our school and maybe wants to transition, we don't have to tell you about it. We'll just have the teacher help guide him through that transition. All these things, like leave my children out of it. And um, you know, I'm always going to listen to each side. I'm not going to vote right for the rest of my life. It was necessary to vote right this last time around. It was necessary in my opinion, to vote right the last three times. Um, but I will always listen, and there will be another shift in the next 10 or 20 years when it comes to extremism on either side, either party, whether it's right wing extreme or left wing extreme. And I will finally make a case here in public that in my opinion, left wing extremism is far more extreme than right wing extremism.
Yeah.
It's a
They
lot. I
the
think
the right-wing extremism gets amplified by the news, but the left-wing extremism, from what I'm seeing, is much more common
Yeah.
Especially talking to people in the gay community and see how extreme it is, how much they think their lives are in danger when I'm just like enjoying my life, having a good life as a gay person. I'm never feeling threatened by anything. I haven't had rights taken away from me. And any of the 3 times that I voted for Trump, my rights have been the same, if not have grown. But I think that the way, like with all the stuff that you just went into, the liberal party or like the Democrat Party, they have been milking this goodwill that was built over a long time, that they were the party of all these things that you mentioned, but now they're no longer that. And so the people who still vote for them are still, they don't follow politics and they still think that's the case when it's not, or they're buying into all the news narratives. I mean, very deeply spiritual people that I've talked to recently about politics, it's like they'll go into all these things from the news and it's just like, dang, you're like still watching the news, you're still believing this stuff because and they'll think they're above it because they're watching it come from some influencer, but on the right and on the left, these influencers are all paid by the RNC and the DNC that have all these eyes on them too. So it's just like watching the legacy news media too. Like you really got to be able to have the time to look into all this stuff. But one of the things I was saying to so many like boomers that I was working the election with last year was that the Democrat parties has become the party of the elites, and they have a very elitist attitude. And they didn't understand at first, but I've had several of them come back to me and be like, "Whoa, like this shit's crazy, dude. Like what? Like now I see what you were talking about, and this and that." And the I just one of the things I thought was really funny. I was watching a clip with Asmongold, and it was they were watching an MSNBC report that was talking about like the Democrats have been went into like all these expensive like lavish hotels and are having all these meetings on how to reconnect with the working class voter, with the average voter. And he had to pause it and go back and play it again and be like, guys, now you see why they're losing. Like, and this is from MSNBC here. They're saying this like it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's over here like, this is why you've lost them, though, because of this elitist attitude. All these people who have donated money to you, you're going to rich and lavish hotels instead of going to just talk to them or meeting them on social media or somewhere like that. And you're like doing all, people are being looking at you as viewing them as this formula that has to be worked through. And with you talking about just as a white man too, it's like, how about you include some policies that are actually good for me as a white man?
Hmm.
And then maybe I'll actually consider voting for you. But I think that astrologically speaking, with everything that you're seeing, the Democratic Party it's going to fall. It's going to get worse for them before it gets better. They're going to have to totally rebuild. The party's going to need to be gutted and rebuilt. And they still haven't gotten the message for the most part. Like a lot of them are talking about this, like, hey, like we totally messed up and we're so disconnected from voters, and that's great, but like the leadership still hasn't really realized that and that they are going to have to change things up. And but so like for me, like I love seeing it because like at least they're getting it, but that means they're going to rebuild and have a party that connects with people before the Republican Party does. So it's like we're going to get a wave, and this seems to be about like 8 to 10 years out, a wave where there is this resurgence in the Democrat Party or in the left side, and they're really going to be able to take over and stuff, and then like the right side. So there's like this 4 year lag because I think once Trump is out, that then the Republicans are going to need to figure out what they're going to do because they're not going to be able to connect because it's Trump that's the one connecting, and that's created this new brand for the party. But then you've got the Peter Thiels, the Miriam Adelsons. They see which way the wind is blowing, and so that elitism that has been on the side of the Democrat Party, like injecting itself into the Republican side. We've only got a few years until we have to take a step back from the Republican Party. So it's I feel you on that.
I feel like there's a very strong possibility with the way that news is no longer censored and filtered through maybe two organizations that a third party can arise. And it
Yeah.
should. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not on this podcast today endorsing the right. I will say that I do enjoy a lot about Donald Trump the way he is in office, and I have to say that I did vote for him 3 times because I did. However, I was going to vote for Bobby Kennedy this year. That was going to be my vote, honestly. And then second, last thing about the Democratic Party, how about instead of installing your candidate, you actually go through the primaries and do it correctly. They stole the 2016 election from Bernie, and then they installed Kamala Harris without a primary. Not voting for a party that just installs somebody that wasn't actually chosen. It goes against almost everything that you know that we're taught as an American. And I can guarantee you, if it was between Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris would have been third of that list in a primary, 100%.
Hmm. Well, and then even look at Gavin Newsom right now. He knows which way the wind is blowing. And this is so reminiscent of leading up to before the Civil War. So it's interesting the alignment is mirroring that. But you had what were called Copperhead Democrats. And they were Democrats that were moving towards the Republican side because they felt which way the wind was blowing. And they were distancing themselves from all the opinions being held. And I think we're really going to see this play out where the ideologies are people like a lot of the far left Democrats are doubling down and doubling down on these ideologies, and it's going to create this type of fracture, whether it's like literal with states seceding or just on a more like figurative level. And you just see like Bill Maher and Gavin Newsom and all of these different Democrats that are taking a step back and really like hitting the center again, just like the Copperhead Democrats did leading up to the Civil War.
Interesting tie. Raffi, do you have anything left to add for today?
Anything left? I mean, I would say just to stay as grounded as possible. The energies, things are about to get really loud. The directions are the emotional directions that you can be pulled in are so many right now. Like finding something that can bring you peace, making sure things are right with your family. On June 1st, we've got a Venus conjunction with Chiron and Aries. So that's kind of a last good chance to old wounds that are going to come up with relationships and stuff. Make sure you address them, make sure you heal them. And then we've got Jupiter moving into Cancer. There is the focus on the home life, making sure that's stable and good because for the rest of the year, for really the next 2 years after that, you're going to want a good home team and family and people that you can stick together with through these financial changes that are coming up, just through everything that's going to be thrown in your face, how loud it's going to get. You need to really be able to lean on each other and depend on each other for that.
Beautifully said. Anybody that's still listening, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment, share. We really appreciate anybody getting the word out about this podcast. It's a lot of fun as usual. Raffi, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, Veiled
Hopefully,
Precision on Instagram, by the
Veiled,
way.
Veiled Precision on Instagram. Jesse Hunt 454 on Instagram. Give me a follow as well. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.